The Season 2 roadmap for Modern Warfare 2 has been revealed, and fans are absolutely furious, and I understand why this time around. Usually I think people do kind of over-exaggerate their hatred for a lot of the things Call of Duty does these days, regardless of how you feel about the game as a whole, because you can feel like the game is not very good, but also still be like, okay, they're still adding some decent amount of stuff and decent variety. But for this season, I can really tell they are shafting multiplayer really hard. In terms of Warzone, there actually is quite a bit of content and it actually looks pretty good. So first of all, of course, we're getting the brand new map for Warzone 2 called Ashika Island. Now this is going to be a Resurgence map, which I'm very excited for because I prefer Resurgence over regular Battle Royale any day of the week, especially in Warzone 1, but even back during Blackout, I always preferred playing Alcatraz, and then you go into Warzone, I much preferred playing Rebirth as well as Fortune's Keep. So I'm very excited to see how this map plays. Hopefully it's better than any other Resurgence map we've ever had, but I do think it'll make Warzone a little bit more playable. And there's some new updates as well, like the 1v1 Gulag, which isn't anything new, it's just reverting back a change they made that people thought was unnecessary, but at least it would probably make Warzone play a bit better. There's some new stuff for DMZ as well, which I think there is some fun to be had in DMC. I don't think it's a bad mode by any stretch of the imagination. I just don't really care that much, to be honest. I played it a couple times. It's not really for me, but I could see the appeal to it, so I think there's some good content being added there as well. Then you look at the weapons, operators, and more section, you have some new guns, and they all look pretty decent. They look like the same guns that we already have in the game, to be honest. That's a big problem I had with Modern Warfare 2019, and I'm starting to have it with this game as well. A lot of the guns just look too similar to one another, and I know it's because they're really going for a realistic approach on the weapons, but let's be real here. Real guns in real life, a lot of them, they look very similar to each other, even if they're a very different gun. And I feel like Treyarch did a better job of making the guns look very unique and distinct rather than them just looking like another gun that already exists in the game. Like, just looking at these guns here without looking at the name, if you just showed me it, I would probably assume it's already a gun in the game, to be honest. So whatever, but they look like they could be fun, and some new melee weapons as well. You got some like dual swords like we had back in Cold War as well. And then for the cosmetics, they don't look that interesting. I'm not really too crazy on the cosmetics in this game so far. I think most of them have been pretty boring. I'm assuming the battle pass is probably not going to be that interesting, just like it was for Season 1. But yeah, that's all there. That's paid content though. It's not stuff we're going to get for free, other than the guns, of course. There's a new raid coming, which I haven't actually played raid yet. I do plan on it at some point, but I haven't done the first raid. There's ranked play coming, and there's some new modes. And actually the modes is probably the thing that looks best, because there's a lot of cool modes coming, including Infected, Gun Game, and Grind, which I'm not crazy about Gun Game anymore. I used to be back in the day, but nowadays it's not really that exciting anymore. I played it to death. Infected is still really fun. Grind, though, probably one of my favorite multiplayer modes of all time, so I'm excited to play that in this game. You've Drop Zone, All or Nothing, and One in the Chamber coming in season as well, so they are definitely nailing it with the modes, thankfully. But then we get to the maps, and this is the thing everyone is pretty much the most disappointed in, and yeah, it makes complete sense why people are disappointed by it. For 6v6, we have Dome. Yes, Dome from Modern Warfare 3, which also was remade in kind of Ghosts, but not really. Strike Zone is technically a reimagining of Dome. It's a similar layout, but it's a bit different. So some people still consider it a remake of Dome. I really wouldn't call it a remake. It's just a very big reimagining of Dome. Then you also had Genesis and Infinite Warfare, which was kind of like more of a remake of Strike Zone. And then you had Ghosts, which also included a full remake of Dome as well, called, I think it was called Unearthed, if I'm not mistaken. And then we saw it again in Vanguard just last year. And then we saw it again in Al Mazrah. And now we're seeing it in multiplayer. Now, I'm not opposed to seeing a really good map return a bunch of times. Like, for example, Nuketown and Shipment. To me, those are like staples to Call of Duty now. I do want to see Nuketown in every single Treyarch game, and I think it makes sense to have Shipment in every Infinity Ward game. I think it makes sense. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you start doing it for like a bunch of other maps as well, it starts to get kind of annoying, especially when it takes up the slot that should be for a new map. So seeing Dome again, it just feels weird, and it's gonna be probably the exact same Dome that's ripped from Al Mazrah, which we've already played on Al Mazrah, so we've already kind of seen what the location looks like, and it's probably gonna be very similar. And then Valdera's Museum, we already played in the beta. It was already in the game for a while, and then it got ripped out and just repurposed as Season 2 content. Like, it's kind of just a weird thing in my opinion. I don't really have a problem with them doing that. but they're replacing any other new map that we could have. If they had these 2 maps and then a new map on top of that, then I don't think people would be complaining as much, but they don't. That's the issue here. And then we have 2 battle maps, which is essentially the ground war mode, and one of them is the area that includes Terminal in Al Mazrah, and the other one is Observatory from Al Mazrah, which is the dome location. So 3 out of 4 of the maps coming to this update are all from Al Mazrah, which I expected them to do, but what's annoying is that they're using locations that we've seen in Call of Duty games before, instead of repurposing other areas of these maps to make new multiplayer maps. I wouldn't be opposed to that. Think about that. There's so many areas in Al Mazrah that have not been put into multiplayer yet and do not exist in prior Call of Duty games that they could have repurposed and made it into a 6v6 map. You could do the same thing for Ashika Island. Ashika Island seems to have quite a few points of interest. I'm sure at least one of those points of interest could have been used for a 6v6 map. I mean, we were having these same conversations back during Cold War, where I was saying, I understand there might be some development issues going on, but they should be able to have the time to repurpose some of the areas on the Fireteam maps and maybe use those in multiplayer. Like, I've always been saying stuff like that, and I'm saying the same thing now because I assume there's got to be some stuff going on in Infinity Ward that's causing them to not be able to get as much content out as they would hoped to have done. Because even going back to Season 1, their 2 new 6v6 maps were Shipment and Shoot House, which existed in Modern Warfare 2019, and were just, they were just remakes. And they're small maps too, they're not even like full-size maps really. So even just from Season 1, we were kind of confused, and then Season 2 comes around, same thing happens. And we're getting less seasons this time around. It's not like we're getting a full 6-season, life cycle like we did for Modern Warfare 2019 and Cold War. We're doing the same thing like we did with Vanguard with only 5 seasons. So this is the second of 5 seasons, and it still does not really have a traditional new map necessarily. I mean, Museum is technically new. It's just we played it in the beta though, so it's not really new. You know what I mean? I've always said quality is more important than quantity, 1000%. I've been saying that for a long time, but I don't even think the quality of this game is that great, to be honest. In terms of how it's designed, I just don't think it makes a lot of sense, a lot of the design choices, and a lot of them just aren't really my style. Regardless of if I think it's bad for everyone, it's just a lot of it's just not my style, you know what I mean? So I don't expect on playing this game that much regardless, so it's not like this amount of content is upsetting me that much like it is for some people on Twitter, but I think it's something to talk about at least because, I mean, like I said, there's gotta be something going on, and we knew that was probably happening with Cold War because there's a lot of development issues going there. They made that game in a small amount of time, but to our knowledge, there really wasn't any issues with this, at least, again, to our knowledge. They had the full 3 years. You'd think they'd be able to pump a decent amount out in that time. Even Sledgehammer with Vanguard, which seemingly was a rushed product, they did that, and they got 16 maps on launch. Tons of other problems with that game, of course, but I'm just saying, still, 16 maps at launch. I guess it just seems really weird because this game's supposed to have a year 2, regardless of if it's a premium, expansion or whatever. It still is supposed to get a year 2, and I feel like they can't even fill out 1 year of content. So I don't know what they're planning on doing. I don't know what's happening. Most of the content in this season is not even made by Infinity Ward. A lot of it is by Raven Software for Warzone. So it's just a little bit confusing how all of this is really going down. At the end of the day, I think it's important not to blame the devs. A lot of people just want to throw words at the devs and say, oh, it's their fault. It's probably not. I don't think they're sitting around, just doing nothing. Of course, they're probably working their asses off. It's just a matter of Activision's not giving them enough time or enough budget or enough people to make sure they can get the right amount of content out in time for what people want from this game. I think that's the issue here. I don't think it's just them being dumb and not, it's not that, you know what I mean? I think a lot of people want to say it's that, but I don't think it's fair to assume that when it's likely not the case. It's never what we hear. We always hear the devs are being crunched, forced to work really long hours to get this stuff done. There's no way it's a matter of them just being lazy or something. So that's all I have to say for today. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section below. I will definitely be playing this live on the channel. I'll be doing a full live stream for all of the content in multiplayer as well as in Warzone. Probably not for Spec Ops, but maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll check it out for a second or something, but mainly for Warzone and multiplayer. Definitely check that out. Subscribe if you want to see it. Peace out, everyone.